So good morning to everyone. I think we have just completed in the last lecture about your HTTP package, that is a javax.servlet.http.star. Out of that, we have completed HTTP servlet class, and we have done one or more interfaces. Now we are going to do the next one, that is your HTTP session, and we should know what is the syntax for that. Again, HTTP session is not a class, but it's an interface. Okay, so what is the syntax of creating any interface is that you are going to have interface name. If I'm correct that we have done the differentiate between cookies and sessions, just let me know quickly, like if anyone can tell me. Have we done with the difference between cookies and sessions in the last lecture?
Yes,
Yes?
ma'am.
Okay. So that means we have completed this, and we have studied about there are two interfaces available with one class. That was your HTTP servlet class, the very first class, which you can use to create the servlet or implement the servlet in your program. Then we had two interfaces, that is your servlet request interface, HTTP servlet request interface, where we had number of methods, okay, where we can create the cookies and we can have the sessions also. And we had another interface, that is your HTTP servlet response. And we started with the HTTP session interface, where we have this where we have two concepts, that is your cookies and sessions. And we learned about the difference between cookies and sessions. We know that cookies are the client side and the sessions are been known as server side. So it is depending on the lifetime what developer is going to set for the cookie. And for the session, it is like whenever we are going to close the application, it is just going to end it. But there is a scope of improving and extending the lifetime of any session, that as a developer we have to do it. There is no methods been there in the cookies to initialize or to destroy the cookies. It is getting automatically done, destroying by default after 24 hours. But if you are mentioning any time period into the code, then it is going to be live for that particular time. But for session, we have to have the methods which we are going to use it to invoke, or we can initialize the session using the start method, and we can use the destroy method to just destroy all the registered data from the sessions. Fine. Now we are going to start with the HTTP session. So we should know what syntax is all about. So it's an interface. So we have an interface name as a syntax for any interface if you want to create it. So now here interface, what is an interface name here? It's HTTP session. Okay. Now we know that we are not allowed to use any type of keyword in a program. Okay, so by default this particular HTTP session, which is predefined, and it is something being known as it's an interface. So what exactly we have to understand over here is that means it's a predefined and pre-built abstract class available. Okay, I hope that we know, you all know that what is the difference between abstract class and interface. So the abstract class is something which the user is going to create it by using the keyword called abstract. To make any class abstract, we have to use a keyword called as abstract, and the method which we are going to write inside the abstract class is also going to have one keyword, that is an abstract keyword. Okay, so for example, I'll say abstract class ABC, and inside the abstract class ABC, I'm going to have one method, say void add. So I have to mandatorily add abstract keyword before your void word. So abstract void add method, but there will be no implementation of that add method inside your abstract class. Okay, so what you have to do, you have to have the implementation in your main class. That means the immediate class which you are going to create after your abstract class, you have to extend this particular the class ABC which we have created as an abstract into your main class. Fine. And then you have to have the implementation of the method which you have created inside your abstract class. So that was all about your user defined abstract class. So now when we talk about the predefined abstract class, which is known as interface in Java, which is there in your Java already pre-built. So if I want to create an interface, I have an interface name as a syntax. So when I talk about that, HTTP session is nothing but it's an interface. So it's already defined the many abstract methods for this particular interface in Java. So that means in the Java program, you don't have to write this interface HTTP session. Okay, whenever we are going to implement directly to our program, say for example I am creating a class ABC and I'll say implement HTTP session. So what I am trying to understand over here, okay, there is a particular interface is already been created, okay, and it is already having some methods available. What I just need to do is, as a developer, I just have to implement, or I just have to inherit that interface in my program and directly have the implementation of the methods. Okay, so that we are going to work with the interfaces. Okay, so now here again, like the way you have done in your core Java, we don't have to do it over here, that we have to create an interface and then we have to call the interface. No, no need. We just create a main class and directly we can implement the interfaces available in Java. Okay, it will automatically identify that we are actually using the interface and its methods. Fine. Now here what HTTP session is going to provide you, it is going to identify the user across more than one page request. Now what does it mean? So I have a website, I have a web application where I am having a client who is accessing that web application. So it's not necessary that it is going to have only access to one particular web page. If the web application is consisting 10 web pages, we should understand he can visit all the 10 pages. Okay. So maintaining all those, information, the routing information from which web page to the another web page it is going, which web page it is with he is or she is visiting, so that all information needs to get stored into your session, or it should be there into the session when the sessions are live between your client and the server. Okay, and this session is going to happen between your HTTP client and HTTP server. It is going to be persist, it is going to exist for a specified time period, and that's nothing but the connections which we are going to have between client and the server. So once the connection is gone, like the application is closed, the browser is closed, the session is going to get over. Fine. So now here we, if like we want to maintain the session for a longer period, like if we don't want that the session and the session's information should get destroyed once we close the application, then what we can do is we can use the number of things available, and we can use along with these sessions, which will help me to keep my session data and the informations in the server, so that in future purpose, if I wanted to use it, or just to see it, like what sessions we had with the client, I can easily see it. So two options we have: either we can use cookies along with the sessions, and or we can use a concept called rewriting URLs. So now you know what cookies all are about. Okay, we have studied enough about the cookies in the last lecture. Now we are going to learn about the rewriting URLs. Now, what do you mean by rewriting URLs? First of all, URLs is nothing but uniform resource locators. Okay. And when we talk about rewriting that URLs means what? You are going to have the same page. Say, for example, I am visiting to one of the applications, say, for example, facebook.com. I'm going to the home page. After that home page, I'm going to my profile. So that means I'm just changing from one page to the another page. Okay. And to the another page to the third page I'm going. Okay. So that rerouting from one page to the another page, or you can say remapping from one page to the another page within the application. Okay. That all thing is something being known as what you are known as uniform resource locator mapping. Okay, so that means you are mapping your information, or mapping your client's information, where exactly the client is visiting and which places the clients are visiting. Okay, so for keeping all these records, we have one of the software component. Okay, that is something been known as like it is also been known as rewrite engine. That engine is basically is going to be one of the software which is going to perform the rewriting of URL mapping. So means what? It is going to keep all the sessions record into it. Okay, so that software is going to help me to put all the datas and all the informations into it. Fine. Now if I'll just give you a syntax of the URL rewriting, one way also we can understand over here. As I told you that if I have a main page and if I wanted to go to the another page, okay, for going to the another page I have to give some values. Now for example, I'm just typing facebook.com. So first of all, the very first page which is going to come is login page. Okay, so the facebook.com will become your URL. Now what exactly I have to do when I have to go to the home page after login? I need some name and the values. Okay, that can be your first username and the value of that username. Okay, so username is your name one, and suppose the value of username is, say for example, ABC. name 2 will be your password, and what will be the value for that password, whatever password you have set it for. Okay, so this things has been given, and these values are going to get attached to your URL. Then only you will be allowed to reroute to the another page that can be your home page. Okay, similarly, if for example I am just going beyond it, okay, once I have just landed to my home page, and after the home page I am trying to go somewhere else within the application, so it is going to get attached to here. Fine. So this is something rerouting and remapping. Now here we have understood that we have a login page. Fine. So when we have a login page, that means two things have been expected. Okay, that one is a username and one is a password. So we know that in AWT, when we learn about that particular interface, that I have a text field, I have a text area, and if I wanted to get store all the values which are coming dynamically from the interface, from the text fields, I have to get it stored somewhere. Okay, and then based on that data I have to give some output. So I had a scanner class for that. Okay, and with the help of the methods of the scanner class, I used to fetch the values dynamically at the runtime, whatever values the users are giving us. Fine. So in here, in this particular session, HTTP session interface, I have a method called GetParameter Method. Not HTTP session, but you can say in Servlet. Okay, we have a method called GetParameter Method. The method which used to work for the scanner, it exactly same which is going to work here for me, that is a get parameter value. Okay, method, it is going to just get the values from the user, and based on that values it is going to give me the output. Fine. Now if just I'll give you an example. So this is your interface when I'm expecting to have the username in this text field, and on the click of this button it should get redirect to one of the Servlet page, where it should get one message, that is welcome user, and I will have one link, and clicking on this link again I am redirecting to the another page where I'm again going to get some the message from the Servlet. So what it is happening over here, so if I am putting some value over here, until and unless I am not writing the get parameter method over here and trying to fetch the values from this text field on button click, I am not going to get the value what has been typed over here. So once I am going to type, so that name is going to get displayed over here. So there is going to be welcome user. If you put ABC, it will be welcome ABC. This is how it is going to work. And if I have another page link over here, hyperlink, if I'm clicking on it, then I'm going to get switched to the another servlet file. Okay, so this is how your sessions are going to work, and this is how we are going to maintain the record of the sessions. Fine. So one option you had, that was your URL rewriting. That is not going to happen automatically. If I am just trying that I want to implement it, you want some engine, some software to maintain all your records. That can be your rewrite engine, you can say. Okay, so the example which I have given, say for example this is your URL separating from question mark. Okay, always remember, because you should have the parameter name and the parameter value. It is going to come in the form of name and value pair, and it is going to get separated with the help of equals to sign. So before the equals to sign is your name, and then after that's your value. So whatever information you are going to provide it over here, it is going to get redirect to that particular page. Fine. Now everything whatever we are going to request as a client is all going go to the web container, or you can say servlet engine, or a host server, whatever you can call web server. It's going to that web container, getting the more extra informations. Like for example, you have first requested facebook.com, you got the login page as per your request. Once you have provided the information, again the request has gone to the web server with an extra bit of information at the end of the URL. That can be your login credentials, and again your request has been taken by the web server, then your response has been sent. So this is how it is going to work. Again, if you request for the another page, if you're trying to visit to the another page, again request will go, again it will going to append with your URL and going to come back to you. Okay, and just remember that we know how to use the get parameter method. It is being used to fetch the runtime values from the interface. Okay, this is how you're going to work with the sessions. Now we'll have one example. Okay, we'll try to understand more in detail. So here we are going to have three files. If you'll just observe that diagram, we had a client where I was expecting the username, then I had a first servlet file, and then I had a second servlet file. Okay, just remember that diagram. It's not properly we have coded for that particular diagram, but it is similar to that. The working and the rerouting is similar. Now the very first thing is what? You should have a client interface. and you should accept some inputs from the client. Okay, now what we are writing over here in index.html file, HTML is your HTML file, I think you all should know it, and index is the name of that file. Okay, I have not written any HTML tags or body tag. Inside your body tag, I am going to have this form tag. Basically, this is your actual working of your interface. Okay, so now here what I am doing, inside your form tag, I have a attribute called method. Okay, and what method I am writing over here? Post. So that means what I am trying to do over here is I'm just instructing to my HTML page that what I have to do whenever I'm going to put the values which is been expected into your interface. Okay, so which method I am using it? Post method. Why is that so? We should know the difference between get and post method. That I told you, post method is going to give you an option to send the n number of the data length or the length of unlimited values to your the next page. So you can use the post method over here, and what action you want to perform it. If I'm just going to the another page, that I should redirect to which page this action is going to tell me. So after this index file, where I have to land and where I have to redirect, that is been mentioned over here. So action equals to whatever file name you are going to write. This is your servlet file. Okay, that is your Java file. So what name I have given over here, the first servlet file, that is a validate. Okay, now I'm creating two things over here. I'm going to create two text field. One is for the name and one is for the password. What type of data I'm accepting into that? I'm accepting the text type of data, and then I'm going to have the name for that particular input, that is one is user and one is pass. Okay, then I'm going to create one button, that is a submit button. Fine. So this is a basic HTML file which we have written. After this HTML file, what I am expecting, that I should get name and password from the client, and once the client has given that username and password, it should click on the submit button, and once he is clicking on submit button, it should get redirected to the servlet file, call it as validate. Okay, now we'll go to the next file, that is what your validate file, where I have written some servlet code. Fine. Now told you very in the very first lecture that I should have, or we all should have, the three packages mandatorily whenever we are going to code it for the servlet. That is one, your io.star, servlet.star, and servlet.http.star. Okay, so these three files we have imported successfully over here. Now I am going to create my class, my user defined class, that is nothing but your class name is what? My servlet. And what I am trying to extend over here, your HTTP servlet. Now why we are extending or inheriting the HTTP servlet? In the very starting of the second package, we have studied the very first class, that is what your HTTP servlet class. And I told you in the first package, that is javax.servlet.star, we have a servlet interface to create servlets in Java program. And in the second package, that is javax.servlet.http.star, I have HTTP servlet class which will help me to create or implement servlet in my program. Okay, so now it is my user defined class. I am trying to extend or inherit. Why extends? Because it is a class, not an interface. If it was an interface, I would have written implements. Okay, so now I'm just going to extend which class? HTTP servlet class. It will just start creating the servlet. It will allow me to create the servlet in my program. Okay, if you will not write this word, you are not going to able to use anything, so what you have written inside it. Okay, now next is what I'm going to use, again the method called doPost. Okay, now here I am just going to pass the values which I am going to receive from the client. So your development for the client side is done. You have done the one page designing from where you are going to get the response, and taking the response from there and processing it is the job of this particular validate.java job of this page. So now what I'm doing, I'm just again having a method to call as doPost. Why? Because I again have to reroute to the another page. Okay, so now whenever I'm going to use do get or do post method, now why we are using do get and do post method? Because I told you javax.servlet.star, that's a first package, is not going to have these methods. They are going to have a service method, okay, in place of this, and whatever job this do get and do post is doing in this particular program under your second package, okay, or for your HTTP servlet. So this is allowed here. When we talk about the first package, we have a service method where we create the objects what we are creating over here. understanding. So this is like difference. We should always understand what we are having it in using in these two packages. Fine. So now I have a do post method. So what I'm going to do inside the do post method, I'm going to create two objects. Okay, two objects of two different interfaces. First is what your HTTP servlet request, and for next one is HTTP servlet response. Why we are using HTTP servlet request? Because I am going to be more specific with my protocol that I want to use the HTTP or HTTPS. Okay, and with the help of this interface object, I am going to fetch the values which is given by the user. Okay, and with the help of the response interface, that is your HTTP servlet response interface, so with the help of this object, I am just going to give the response back to the client. Okay, and when you use the service method, what is going to happen? Say for example, void service, I'll write servlet request, I'll write servlet response, because there is no HTTP in your first package. Okay, so this is the difference we will have, and ultimately we have to throw the exceptions. That can be a servlet exceptions and IO exceptions, because we are requesting and responding online, using the online programs to do that. And we are taking the inputs from the user, so if the values are not coming from the client end, okay, so that all exceptions can occur. So for that need we have to write the exceptions. Now the next line, what is saying that I am having the object, and object is what? Your HTTP servlet response interface object. Okay, and if you remember in the basic structure of servlet, I have and I have told you that why we are using this particular method, that is response dot set content type. Means what? If I want to send the response to my client, okay, so in which form the client is going to get the response, that I have to mention inside this particular parameter of this method. Okay, so what I am saying that set the content type of the data which the user is going to get, okay, using this method. And in the parameters, what I am saying, the user should get the data in the form of HTML, and that in the form of textual data. Okay, and what encoding type it is should be using, that is your UTF-8. Fine. So this I am just doing for the response which the client is going to receive. Okay, and we have also said that in which form the user is going to get the response. Fine. Now, the major job is that I have to fetch the values from the client interface. So there we had two values, or we can say we were accepting two values. One is username and one is password. So if you remember, I have just given the name as user for your name field, and I have just given the pass as your password. So now here what you're going to do, I told you that we want to fetch the values from the client interface. So I have a specified method for that. That is a Getparameter method. Okay. So now what I'm going to do, I have to take the values from the user, but after taking the values, I have to get it stored somewhere into the variable. Then only I can be able to work with those values. Correct. Similarly, we have worked with the scanner class also in your SY. So it is the same procedure. We just have to understand the difference in your method names. Otherwise, rest is all same. Fine. So now I want to have the data from this particular user, that is your name given to your the field, first field where you are accepting the name, and this is the name of your second field, second text field, that is accepting the password. Okay, so what I'm saying, get the parameter value, okay, or get the values which user is going to put into the first text field whose name is user. Okay, and that I'm going to do with the help of the request object. Okay, so this request object is going to help me to get the values from that text field and getting stored into your name variable. Fine. And obviously if I am getting the values from the text field, it is by default string values is going to be considered. That's why we have a string data type. Fine. Similarly, if I have the another field, that is for the password field, the name is pass for that text field, I am going to get that value by using the get parameter method again, which is going to be taken the values with the help of the request object and getting stored into your another variable called pass. Simply we'll have one condition over here, is what if the values of the pass, that is your password, which I am fetching from the text field, if it is equals to 1 2 3 4. Okay, so here only I am just mentioning, if it is only username can be anything. Okay, whatever user is giving, if it is the username is anything abc xyz, whatever you can call, it's okay. But if the password is 1234, then only I have to redirect it to the another page. Okay, so if I'll just show you here, this is your third page whose name is what, your first.java. So where I have to redirect it, so for redirection you have a specific method called as send redirect. Okay, and how you're going to send that, you're going to send with the help of response object. Okay, so getting the values from user, you are going to get the method get parameter with the help of your request object. And if you want to forward it and give the response to your client back, we have a response object, and then we have a method called send redirect. Now here you have to understand this thing. Okay, now what I'm going to respond it, I'm just going to respond the name. Now what is this name? This is nothing but where I'm storing one value which is coming from the client interface. What name I'm going to put it over here? Say for example, in the first text field I am passing abc as a username, so that abc is going to be fetched from this get parameter method and getting stored into your name variable, and that only I am trying to show in my response page. Okay, so for example, the name value is what now, abc. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to redirect to the another page. The page name is what, first. And if you remember the url rewriting, okay, what was the syntax for that? I'm just going to write the first url name. So here the what url name you have first, and separating by the question mark, then you have a username and the value. Okay, so what is the username I am going to have over here? Username is equals to the name, that name will be your abc. Okay, so this is how you're going to get redirect to your next page, that is your first.java. Okay, now again I have the three files over the three packages over here. I have a user defined class. Again I'm extending the http servlet. Now here what is I have written do get, that means I am just accepting the responses from the next or the previous page. Okay, now here again the servlet request object, servlet response object. Again I have a throwing an exception. Again I have a response dot set content type, which is going to give the response in the form of html using this utf-8, that is encoding. Then I have a class called print writer. So till now what you are doing, you are just accepting the values from the client, that is your html file, processing that values with the conditions in your next file, that is your first servlet file. Once you're meeting with the authentication, and once you meet with the condition, you will be redirected to the last file where the actual response is going to be displayed. So for displaying the response, okay, I have a specified class which we have studied in your basic structure of servlet when I taught you. That's your print writer. Okay, why we are using the print writer? If I am just wanted to display the value using the character stream class, and what is the advantage of using the character stream class over your byte stream class? First of all, the reading data in the form of bits is more in your character stream. Also, uh, it is going to get the values in the form of sky, but the values which is it is going to be taken, it is more for reading. Say for example, if the byte stream is reading only 4 bit at a time, it is going to read 8 bit at a time. So it's almost double the values which the character stream is going to read. Okay, so that's why we are using the class from the character stream. You are allowed to use from the byte stream also. The only thing is that reading of the data is going to be slow comparatively with this character stream. Okay, so now I have done what? I have used the print writer. I have an object. Again, I have the object of your response class. Okay, and I have a method for that. Okay, so if I wanted to write anything over my web page for my client to show the response, I have this method. Okay, now, whatever username I am going to get from there, okay, what was the name of the value I have given? If you remember the URL syntax, that's your URL, that is your name, and that is your value. So name we have to define. Okay, so what name I have given over here? The username. So this is like your one variable where your values is going to get stored. So what was the value I have here from this particular text field ABC? So ABC is getting stored into your username. So this is going to get passed to your next servlet file. Okay, when I'm going to pass this servlet file, what is happening? It is just going to get that value from your first servlet file again using the get parameter method. Okay, that means it is fetching that value from your first servlet file. So again, but obviously we are going to use a get parameter method. Okay, so and I'm just calling that username or the name which I have created for the first file. And this username, say for example, now it is getting stored what, ABC. So it is ABC is going to get stored into your user, and that is been displayed over here. So finally what output the user is going to get, welcome ABC. Okay, so this is like you should understand, this is like a very basic program. This program maybe not there in the practicals also. Okay, it's more than that you have. So this is just the how your programs are going to work, so that I have shown to you, and I hope that you have understood. So we have some advantages and disadvantages also, that it is going to always work whether cookie is disabled or not, so we don't have to depend on the browser. Okay, and if, as I told you when we were learning about the differences between your cookies and sessions, cookies are not at all dependent on your sessions, but the sessions are completely dependent on the cookies. Okay, so if I am not having the enabling of cookies in any particular browser or in any particular web application, so what is going to happen if I want to maintain the session? So I am not going to do it, I am not be able to do it because cookies are not enabled. Okay, so the next option which you have, that is your URL rewriting, that will help you to do that even if the cookies are not enabled. Okay, so there is no the foundation you should have, that the cookies are need to be enabled if we want to have the sessions information. So you can easily do with the help of URL rewriting, because it doesn't demand the cookies enabling. Fine. And the extra form submissions is not at all required for any or each pages. What disadvantages you're going to have, it is only going to work with the links. That means rerouting, if you have one link to the another link, if it is linked to each other or are mapped to each other, and it can send only the
इसमें क्या बोलते हैं, थ्री लॉक, इसमें थ्री लॉक करके
it can
लिखा है ना.
only send the textual information. Okay, so that is also one of the disadvantage you have. Now I'll just have one the basic thing, that is like I have suppose multiple clients sending the request from the two different ends. Okay, and I have a container where the servlets are running into my web server. So what is going to happen, the requests are going to get over here, and that container is going to provide the unique session IDs to each the client. Okay, so that is only you have to understand. I'm just going to give the session IDs to each client, and I'm just also going to maintain the session creation time, when the session was created with that particular client, when it was a last accessed time, the user has closed the application, that can become your last access time. So these are all the objects are going to be maintained. Okay, so now how to get the HTTP session object? We are going to have some methods. If so, for example, I have a method called get session. So what is going to happen, it is going to return to me the current sessions which is associated with the request. Okay, and if the request is not having any type of session, so it is does not have a session, then it is going to create the new one for that particular request. Okay, so if just I wanted to understand that if at all the request which is coming, if it is having any type of any type of sessions associated with it, so I can check with the help of get session, and if it is not having it, so it will create the new one automatically. Fine. Then we have a next method, that is what your get session, and inside that we have a boolean create. So what is going to happen over here, so if I am mentioning over here, so we have two methods over here, students. One is without parameter and one is with the parameter. Okay, so second method is saying what, we have a parameter and that is going to have a boolean value. So what is going to happen over here, it is going to return to me the current session which has been associated with the request. Okay, or if I am not having any current situation, okay, and if I am just writing the boolean value as true, okay, in the parameter, then only it is going to create a new session. So that means as a developer, if you're not mentioning anything and simply writing the get session, it will not wait for the developers answer that I have to create the new one. It will automatically create the new one. Okay, if I am using this method, that means if I am making the boolean value as false, okay, so what will happen, so if I'm just trying to check whether the sessions have been associated with or not with the request, and if it is not associated, then it will not create the new one if I'm putting it as false. Okay, even only if I am putting it as true, then only it is going to return to me the new session. So you have to understand the difference between these two also. The another methods which has been associated with this, that is what your get id, that if you want to identify the session id of any particular request or a current session, you can get it with the help of this id. You can get the creation time, that means the session has been created in particular time when it was started, you can do with the help of this method. Get last accessed time, that is when the client has actually stopped using your application and last access time it can be given to you. Then we have an invalid, that is you're invalidating the session if any object is not binding or not using any type of what you can say any policies of the sessions bin which is created for client. So if it is binding or if it is just violating any policies, so it will just invalidate that session. Fine. So we know that what cookies are, it's just a small piece of information that is been there in your local client machine, which is getting stored in the form of text format, and it is going to be by default for maximum 24 hours, but you can increase it very easily as a developer. It is going to give you few attributes to be which is been stored into your text file, and it can be the maximum age of that cookie, it can be the version number. Okay. And you have a specified class or a specific class in your second package, that is your servlet.http.star, and in that star you have a specific class, predefined class, called it as cookie. So whenever you want to create a cookie in your program and you expect that your web application should collect and send the cookies to your client, so you can use this cookie. Okay. So that's why we have a cookie class, and when you implement this class in your program, that means you want your client should have the cookies in its local machine, so that the performance is going to get increased whenever the next time the client is going to access the same web application. Okay. So this is how we are going to use. And again, if I wanted to create a new cookie into my program, say for example I have a web application and I am sending the response to my client along with the cookies. If the client is accepting that he want the cookies in his machine, then only I can actually make the cookies to get stored into his local machine. If it is denying, then I cannot do that. Okay. So now if in a web application I am trying to have a cookie, I can send the response to the client with the help with the cookies. I can do that with the method available, that is what add cookie method. Okay. So what I can do, I have a package that is javax.servlet.http. In dot star, what I am having a interface which is responsible to send the response to the client, that is http servlet response. And in that interface I have a method called add cookie. So along with the response, the cookie is going to go to the client. Okay. And similarly, if I am just expecting and I know that my client who is using my web application is having the cookies in his end, and whenever the request is going to come from his end, so that cookies are not going to come automatically, I have to mention something to call that cookie. So I have a method called get cookies method. Okay. So whenever you try to request something from that web application, so the web application is going to understand that I have a cookie stored in his local machine, and it is been called by the web container, and that is been called with the help of get cookies method. So that is present inside your HTTP servlet request interface. Okay. So this is how your methods are working for you. This is a simple example we have, and we already know this diagram why we are using it. Okay. So all the things which you are going and rerouting or remapping to one page to the another page, you can simply store into your cookies. Okay. And the last one in this chapter is your servlet lifecycle, and this is the most important question you have. Maximum time till now, whatever exams we had this question in the question paper. Okay. So one question is definitely, we can say, that is going to come, that's your servlet life cycle. So what life cycle we have for servlet? First of all, the servlet class is going to get loaded. Okay. That means I have to mention to my program that I want to implement the servlet. Once it is set, then it is going to get loaded into your web container. Fine. Once it is getting loaded, I have to create the instances of that servlet class. That means whatever interfaces or classes I am going to use thereafter, after implementing the servlet in my program, I have to create the objects. So if you understand, we have created number of objects for servlet requests, servlet responses. Okay, so we have created instances, and with that instances we have dealt with our servlet in our program. Then we have an init method, okay, for initializing or for starting your servlet. We have a service method. Okay, so we can write number of things. The service method, or you can say do get and do post method, which you use in your second package. So both are having the main, core working in your program. And then we have a destroy method where you can destroy the, or clean up the resources which has been occupied. Okay, so now one by one we'll just see this. This is your diagram, but I'm going to create my servlet. I'll initialize the servlet. I'll check whether the available services or the services are available or not, what I'm trying to access. If it is available, then it is going to request the services. Okay, and then it is going to get destroyed, and then it is going to unload it. Okay, or else if I'm initializing and the services which I'm trying to check whether it is available or not, and if it is not available, directly it is going to get destroyed. And if the initialization is only failed, okay, so it is directly getting unloaded. Fine, so this is the diagram. It is important, you have to remember. This is the diagram which you have to draw it also in your exam. Now, the first thing what we said, the servlet class is going to get loaded. That means there is a option available inside your Java virtual machine. If you remember the very first thing, that is a class loader, which is responsible to load your Java file. Okay, so when I am having that class loader who is going to load the Java file, that means it is loading this servlet class. Okay, so once it is loaded, what is going to happen? It is going to go to the next step, that is your creation of the instances. Okay, once the container is going to create the instance, the web container is going to create the instances after loading the servlet class. And we should know that it is going to be created only once in the servlet lifecycle. Okay, that instance is only for the servlet only once in the whole life cycle, and that instance is going to be destroyed once the life cycle is getting over. Next is what your init method, that is for initialization method. Okay, and we have studied these three things, that is your init method, service method, and your destroy method. So how you're going to use that init method? You have a interface called servlet config interface. Okay, in your first package. So that interface comes from your first package, where I'm going to have the object of that particular interface also. If you can see in the parameter how we have written, so that's servlet config, and the config is the object name of that interface. Okay, and there how you are going to start with the initialization of your servlet. Then we have last two things, that is your service method. Once your initialization has been started, now your web container is going to call all the service methods. Okay, whatever we have written inside the service method and the body of that service method, it is all been going to be called. Okay, and then what is the syntax we have? If you remember, we had a service method. So instead of writing HTTP servlet request, what we are writing servlet request, because it is coming from the first package. And from the second package, if we talk about, we have do get and do post method, where we write HTTP servlet and HTTP servlet response. Okay, then lastly, what you're going to do, once your task has been completed, you are going to get invoked with the destroy method, which is going to clean up all the processes, all the resources from the container which is being occupied by your request. That can be your memory or it can be your thread. So it is just having a simpler you can say syntax, that is your destroy method. You don't have to write anything, just gets invoked whenever the the processing has been completed. Fine, so here we are completing your this fourth chapter, and these are the possible questions we have. There are 10 questions you have in this particular chapter, and each interfaces, each class, I have just very much simplified. There is not only 10 questions, it can have more. Okay, but in question paper it is never been asked one specific class to you, like say for example explain servlet context interface. It is never been asked like that. It is always going to get asked like servlet context and servlet config. Similarly, we have servlet request and servlet response. So this is how I have made the questions. I have given you already this particular chapter notes in the drive link, fourth chapter notes. You can refer to it. I'll upload this PPT also. Okay, and yeah, from my end it is done. So if you have any query, you can just ask me.